Okay, everyone, it's 10 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. I would just like to say hello and welcome to today's webinar, Solving the Challenges of Working from Home. I'm Jolene Carey Pace, the Program Coordinator at the Wilkes University Small Business Development Center, and I'm very happy that all of you could join us this morning. Before we begin, I would like to thank Ken Anderson for partnering with us and sharing his presentation today. Just one quick note to please put yourselves on mute so that we can avoid having any background noise. Also, as we go along, you can type any questions that you might have into the chat box, and there will also be time at the end of the presentation to ask questions. And now I will go ahead and turn the program over to Ken. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you are all having a fine morning this morning on this gray, dreary day. And we're going to discuss some of the issues that everyone faces when they are working from home. Working from home has many benefits, but it also has some challenges. So we're going to talk about that today. Let's see here. Just a little bit about myself. I have been in IT for, over 30 years. We'll just leave it at that, in a number of roles. And currently I work for Ethixa Solutions, and we provide IT support for small and medium-sized businesses in a variety of ways. And we aren't here to sell anything this morning, so I won't go into that. But we do offer support for a number of the things that we're going to be talking about this morning. So we would like you to be aware of that, and feel free to reach out to us and contact us for any of your needs. As far as myself goes, I've been working from home for probably 15 years or so. And so a number of these challenges I'm very intimately familiar with, and I've kind of developed my own strategies for coping with these things. A number of the things that we're going to be talking about today probably won't be new to you. And if you've been working from home for any length of time, you've already developed your own solutions for some of these. And some of these things may seem like common sense, but hopefully we'll hit upon one or two things that you can take away from this webinar today, and that will help you, and that's the goal. I do want to encourage you to enter questions as we go along. I would like to make this as interactive as we can. It's a little bit harder in a webinar format. I much prefer meeting in person, and I suspect that most of you would prefer that as well, but we'll make the best of this, and in these strange days that we're living in. So please use the chat, ask your questions. I'd love to interact with you and make this as customized to you as possible and answer your questions. We're also going to have time for some question and answers at the end. So let's get started. One of the biggest challenges that many people face when working from home is there's a tendency for motivation to just slip away. It's hard, and a lot of the reason for that is because it's hard to maintain a distinction between when you're at home and when you're at work, because now they're the same physical environment. So it can be really hard to wake up in the morning and feel energized and ready to go to work, or you have this tendency to just get up and just kind of slide over to the desk and just stare at the screen, and okay, I'm kind of at work, but mentally I'm not there. So some of the suggestions I would have for that would be to set some normal workday hours and stick to those hours. This isn't a strategy that works for everybody, but it can really help to identify a set working period that is designated as a work day, so that you mentally respond to that and know that you're not at home. Even though you're in the same physical space, you are not at home, you're at work, you're during your work day. And the other thing I would recommend would be to actually go to work. Get up, get a shower, get dressed, grab a cup of coffee, and then go to the office. Even if your office is only 2 feet down the hallway, you get this this sense that you are going to the office. One of the things that I do that might seem a little weird is I actually get up in the morning and I go out of the house, I get in the car and I go to the drive-through and I get a cup of coffee and then I come back. And I'm only gone 10, 15 minutes maybe, but there's something about that mental connection from getting up and going somewhere that trips me into the working mode. And I find that that's something that helps me. And each of you may find something that that works for you. Connected to that is time management. And again, because you're in that same physical space and you have so many things that are available to you that you wouldn't have in an office environment, it can be really hard to use time effectively. And there's two ways you can lose time. One, you can just be distracted by things and have so many other things to do, whether it's chores with laundry and cleaning, or whether it's games and books and things that are movies that are available that you wouldn't have in an office environment. So you can lose time that way, but there's also a danger in overworking and not making and working too many hours, because that's a trap I fall into. I get up, I go to work, and then I'm just at work and I don't pay attention to the time. And before you know it, my wife is upset with me because I'm still working and she wants to have dinner. And so those are both things to watch out for. And this is another area where sticking to some set workday hours really helps. It can prevent procrastination and prevent one type of time from bleeding into another type of time. And you want to make sure that you allow for time with those important to you, your family, your friends, those types of things. Now, if you're working from home, when normally you would have a commute, and some people have rather long commutes, that can give you more time to work, and that's okay. So consider, how much does your work time really account for? And that includes the time that you would normally spend in the car, normally spend getting ready for work, all of those things. And one thing you might want to do is account for all of that time and set those as your work hours. So while that might mean you're working longer hours, it also means that you would have an increase in productivity by doing that, which, if you desire to continue working from home, even after the COVID situation is mostly resolved, if you can demonstrate that increased productivity and you want to continue working from home, that's going to encourage your employer, provided you're not self-employed, obviously, that's going to encourage your employer to consider allowing you to continue to work from home. Another thing I would suggest, and this is an area where I do not do well at all, but I would suggest that you take regular breaks. Break up that time, get a cup of coffee, go for a walk, take an exercise break, leave the office, quote unquote, the office for lunch, get up from that desk, go somewhere else, have lunch, and use your time well that way. Doing so, taking those regular breaks tends to provide for more productivity and not less. And we also want to avoid distractions, which is, I find this to be a problem. It's enough of a problem that I've made it its own topic here. And some of the things that can really help with removing distractions are to create a separate work area. And again, it could just be a desk. It doesn't have to be a room. If possible, you'd like your work area to be a room with a door that closes to remove those separate, those home distractions as much as possible. But that's not always something that you can do. You can't always have a separate room just for work, but at least make an area that's a desk with a computer or or whatever it is that's solely for work. That way, when you are there at that desk, you are working. And you may want to use noise canceling headphones to help eliminate noise distractions, particularly if you don't have a room where you can close the door to block out all those noises. Use some noise canceling headphones and set up some rules for the home so that people know not to disturb you. When I am here in this room or I am here at this desk, I'm not at home. I'm at work, and I'm not to be disturbed when I'm at work. Having a home office may also have the benefit of allowing for the home office deduction on taxes. They've changed the rules in recent years, so it makes it a little harder than it used to be. It's a little more strict on the rules, so be careful about whether you can claim this deduction or not. You may want to talk to a tax expert, which I certainly am not. But if you do have an actual separate home office, you may be able to check to utilize that home office deduction for doing that. Exercise and movement is really important. A trap I get caught in is I go up in the morning to my desk and then I just work all day, and that's not very good for me, and it's not good for your physical health, and which also impacts your mental health. So exercise and movement is really key. That works with taking those regular breaks. At least get up and move, get up and stretch. There's if you search online, it's easy to find lots of guides for exercises you can do without moving far from your desk, stretches and exercises you can do in your chair. You can use a standing desk. One thing that that my boss does is anytime he's using the phone, he's on the speakerphone and he walks the whole time he is on the phone. That's not something I'm able to do. I can't think and talk at the same time, I guess. So, or walk and talk at the same time, but that's what he does. He walks all the time that he's using the phone. But you can also use a standing desk, which encourages movement. And there's lots of exercise equipment options that work well at a desk, whether it's the exercise pedals that go right under your desk, so it's like you're pedaling a bike, or dumbbells that you keep right next to your desk so that you can lift those anytime you're thinking about something. Hand grip strengtheners, anything that works for you to get some exercise. There's chairs that are like exercise balls. I was at a client the other day that had one of those, and that looked like a really cool idea. I'd probably be too tempted to play on the thing, so maybe I shouldn't do that. But move around, be energetic, be healthy, and be happy. Some of us are not as self-motivated as others, and need a little more, yeah, easy for me to say, need a little more guidance and supervision than others. So the switch from working in an office where you have contact with your team and your supervisor to moving to a home office where you're not that connected can be difficult. It can be, becoming aimless can be easy. It can be difficult to remember goals and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So avoiding aimlessness is a good thing to do. And some of the things you can do is to stay connected. And to do that, you want to remain in close contact with your supervisor or your team, and stay informed, stay in touch, keep asking about prioritization. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's next? Keep everybody in the loop. Talk often. You don't have an office next door you can go to, but we've all got tools we can use, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. So keep everybody in the loop and make sure you're informed so you know what to do. If you find yourself wondering, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, good thing would be to ask. Another thing that's really good is to set some goals. And there's You want to set some broad monthly and weekly goals so that you have the big picture, but also set up some high priority tasks for each day. Write those down, keep track of them so you have some targets for each day, and that helps you keep from getting off point. Another good thing to do would be to send out some action reports to update your supervisor or your team on what you're doing on a daily or a weekly basis, because you're not the only one that's in this boat. Everybody probably is, and so if you're each keeping each other informed, it really helps to stay on top of things, and that helps with collaboration, which is our next topic. You don't have people in the same building. You're not in cubicles or offices right next door. You don't have that time where you can just catch a cup of coffee together or things like that. So it's really hard to communicate with one another and to collaborate as effectively as you might have in the past. So some of the things I would suggest there would be to schedule meetings, particularly if you're a supervisor and you're supervising some people. Check in with your team. Do a weekly stand-up call. This is something I do with my team, is we do a weekly stand-up call, and our discussions don't just have to be about work. While we do want to make sure that we're productive, it's hard to be productive without some sort of camaraderie and understanding about one another. So we do want to be social. Humans are social creatures. So friendships are important for productivity and for teamwork. So check in with your team, schedule those meetings. Yes, talk about projects and goals and all of those things, but don't make it just about work all the time. Keep in touch with how people are doing personally, and maintain that friendly team relationship and social aspect. When it is about work, you want to clarify team goals. Before closing out a meeting, make sure that the goals, the next steps, deliverables, all of those things are clear on each team call. And again, just stay in touch. Even if it's not a team stand-up call, schedule some virtual coffee times and catch up. It's more important for productivity than you might think. And use the tools that are available to do that. The nice thing about living in this day and age, as opposed to 10 years ago, is that we have a lot of tools that can help us with collaboration. Right now, we're on a Zoom video call. Can you imagine trying to do this 10 years ago? It would have been much more challenging. But there are a number of tools that are very helpful in collaboration itself, like Teams, Microsoft Teams, Slack in particular, are designed for team collaboration, helping track messages, file sharing, scheduling, all of those things. Email may not be the best for collaboration, but at least there's a communication trail. And there's also some hardware tools that make these things easier. So there's webcams, obviously. Many of us are using a webcam this morning to do this. There are headsets and speakerphones. I prefer a speakerphone because it makes it easier for me, but if you live in an area where there's a noisy environment, sometimes a speakerphone doesn't work too well for that, so you might want to use a headset. You can also use multiple monitors, which lets you spread out your screens and get more done in the same workspace. And one of the things I would say about using technology, there's a lot of technology out there, and when COVID first hit it, particularly, it became very difficult to get some of these things, to get the speakerphones and the headsets and the webcams, and they're starting to become more available now. They're a little pricey, but even so, be careful about your choices. Be careful about using off-brand and strange named gadgets. because depending on where they are made, they're not well investigated. They may be unreliable. They may not work great. And even worse, it's possible that they can contain eavesdropping software. You know, who knows what that webcam the Chin Now webcam that you've never heard of before, but was $40 on Amazon. Who knows what kind of hardware and software is really in that thing, and where that video might be going, or what it might be doing when you don't even know you're supposed to be using it. So I would just caution you against using strange things. Certainly webcams by Logitech, Microsoft, HP, those types of things, those are good quality and well-respected brands, so you're probably okay there. And same with headsets and speakerphones, Jabra, Motorola, Logitech, Plantronics. Those are good brands. You're going to pay a little more for them, but in my estimation, it's worth it just to get something reliable and more likely to be safe. The other thing to consider when you're talking about technology, and this is always an issue, is to be prepared for things not working. Have backups. If you're scheduling team meetings and calls and webinars and other things, technology doesn't always work. You may have an internet outage, and so usually there's a backup option. If you have a Microsoft Teams meeting scheduled, or Skype or Zoom, there's a phone number available to dial in. So just make sure you have that stuff handy, so that if your internet goes out, you can avoid being disconnected, and you can still join the meeting, even if it's just over phone with no video. And be prepared to address any unexpected technological challenges. If you've got an important meeting coming up, test your technology. You'll be very happy that you did. Another problem that many of us face, I know I feel this, is I like people. I like talking to people, and I really miss meeting with my friends. I miss going out and doing things with everybody. So isolation can be a real problem. And when I put this together, I thought of Tom Hanks in Castaway, and he's there, and he's isolated, and he's talking to Wilson the volleyball, and we don't want to get in that situation. So there is working from home without that interaction with the outside world can make for a lonely existence. So use the things that are available to you to help overcome that. Video calls can help. It's still not the same as meeting in person, but you can do video calls with friends and family, and there's a number of tools out there for video calls. We're on one right now, obviously, Zoom, but there's also Microsoft Teams, there's Skype, there's GoToMeeting, there's FaceTime on your phone, and that's a real helpful thing. If you're able, plan some outdoor activities. Get outside, where it's well ventilated. You can stay separate and do walks and hikes and picnics and still physically meet. It's going to be getting harder to do that now that it's getting colder, but there's still a little bit of time left with some good weather, so get out and do that. One of the things that I really enjoy doing, my family really enjoys playing games, board games in particular. And so, you know, we used to have people over, and we'd get a bunch of people together, and we'd play board games and do things like that. And it's really hard to do that, but we found that we can play board games virtually. There's a lot of board games on the computer that you can play over the internet. So we get together, a dozen of us, and we'll play games online. You can do watch parties over Netflix and all watch the same movie and get together. You can do a virtual book club. And I'm sure you guys probably have more creative things you can do to avoid that isolation aspect. All right, let's start talking more about the technology. Since I'm a tech guy, this is really where I start to understand things. And one of the aspects that's really important about being able to collaborate and work from home is you need to be connected. And to be connected in this day and age, it means we need our internet. Everybody here is using their internet to connect to this webinar. And with the internet comes bandwidth. You need a certain amount of bandwidth in order to do everything that you need to do. And a lack of bandwidth can be a problem. So there's a few ways in which this can happen. One, maybe you don't have enough bandwidth. Excuse me. Maybe your internet connection really isn't fast enough. And there's only one way you can increase your actual internet connection speed, and that would be to talk to your internet provider or switch to another provider. Check with them. You might be surprised, depending on how long it's been since you've talked to them. A lot of times they'll add new plans and increase speeds and decrease costs, and they're not going to tell you. Well, we've run into that in a number of instances where I've called internet companies and said, okay, I'm on this plan, and what are my options? And they say, oh yeah, last year we added this new plan. It's twice as fast, and it'll save you $25 a month. So if you need better internet speed, check with your provider. Check with other options. A new provider might be in the area that wasn't there before, and you might be able to get better connection that way. Another thing you can do is, it might be the case that your internet itself is fast enough, but the connection you have to it through your Wi-Fi in particular isn't fast enough. So you want to improve your access to your existing bandwidth. There's a few things you can check for. You can check the position of your router, make sure that you're getting a strong signal. You can check how many devices are connected and sharing that signal. When you're on Wi-Fi, every single device that is connecting to, particularly to a single router, is sharing one limited bandwidth. So every device that you connect that uses that connection reduces the speed available to every other device. So be careful for that. Check where the router is positioned. Maybe just moving it to a better area in the house can give you better bandwidth. Also, check for interference. Is your router near the kitchen? Microwaves do a number on Wi-Fi access. Maybe your router just isn't a very good router, and so replacing it with a quality router may really help. And there's some brands that I would recommend. Netgear, Asus, Linksys, TP-Link are all quality brand routers. And you also want to look for the technology that the router is using. Look for technologies like Wi-Fi 6, or at least an AC 1200 or higher. You may see AC 1750, AC 2600. Those types of things can be good routers, but at least an AC 1200 router, which means it's at least capable of 5 gigahertz to give you enough bandwidth. If you've got a big house and you've got one router, that can be trouble, because your router is not going to be able to cover the entire house. And they do offer Wi-Fi extenders, but in my experience, Wi-Fi extenders they may not work real well. They may be more trouble than they're worth, so you want to be careful about those. Something that's fairly new are mesh routers. And That's what you see. Those the three white boxes here are, that's a mesh router system. They usually come in 2s or 3s, and they can be really helpful because they're not just Wi-Fi extenders. Each one of those is an actual router, and they have a set of bandwidth where they talk to themselves. So you can extend your Wi-Fi access throughout your home by positioning. You have one main router, and then the other routers connect to each other, and you can extend your Wi-Fi signal throughout the house, and it allows you to connect more devices and have improved bandwidth. So take a look for mesh networks. There's a number of them available right now that are pretty good. There's Google and Eero, TP-Link, Netgear, all have some pretty decent mesh networks. Some of them get a little pricier than routers, but it very well may be worth it for you. Also, when it comes to bandwidth, bandwidth is going to be limited. You only get so much, and if you've got kids at home doing virtual school while you're trying to do video conferencing, and maybe a couple people doing video conferencing at home, you're all trying to use that limited bandwidth. So I would set some rules up so that you're not trying to stream 3 movies at the same time somebody else is trying to do a video conference. Video games, watch for all those things and where your bandwidth is going, so that everybody can kind of get their share. Security is very important and very challenging. In an office environment, offices have been set up for a long time. They've got an IT department, or they've had somebody come in, and that office usually has had some effort put into setting up some security with routers and firewalls and policies and all of these types of things. But now, with employees all moving from that office that's had some security set up and moved to a home environment, you have a greatly increased attack surface. Now you've got, instead of one location that has been protected, now everybody's in many different locations, and each one of those locations is a targetable area for malicious users. So if we're working from home, I think our goal should be that we want to make sure that we're at least as secure, if not more secure, than when we were in the office. And we all would also like to be as productive, if not more productive, than we were in the office. So how do we do that? How do we approach the challenges that come from working from home as far as IT security? Because in addition to these multiple locations, we also have increased network traffic, because now we're sharing things over email and sharing files, and maybe we have more cloud services, which increases our likelihood of susceptibility to an attack. Quality IT support may be less accessible. Most companies don't have the IT staff available to support each user in their own home environment, so that's a difficulty. There's an increased likelihood of the attack of a phishing messages. Phishing, we'll talk about a little bit more, has greatly increased due to COVID. So you need to be able to watch out for that. And there's also a tendency to share computers for both work and personal use. So when you go into the office to use your computer, for the most part, I mean, you may hit Facebook or something like that, but for the most part, you're using it for work use. But when it's at home, now you're even using your home computer for work, but you're also still using it for personal use, for games or shopping or whatever all those things are. And now that greatly increases your risk of exposure. So the question is, what do we do about these things, and how do we secure our home environment to protect ourselves and to protect our company and protect our company's information? And we'll attack this from a couple different areas. First of all, we'll talk about Wi-Fi. And we talked about improving our Wi-Fi bandwidth, but along with that, we want to make sure that we've got good security on our Wi-Fi. And some of the solutions for improving our bandwidth are closely coupled with the security aspects. So we want to use a good router with good protection capabilities. And those brands, the Netgear and the Linksys and the Asus, are also good as far as protection. Routers have firmware and software in them as well that should be kept up to date. Just like you need to keep your computer up to date with Windows updates and Microsoft updates. The same goes for routers, and that's not as easy to do because it's not as in your face as Microsoft Windows. Your router's usually not going to pop up a message saying you need to update me. It's something that you have to implement a manual process and log into your router and check to see if it needs an update. But it is important to keep those updated and check the brand of your router, find out how to log into it, and make sure that it is up to date. Every router is going to be a little different. If you haven't, sometimes when you set up a router, there may be a default password. And if you haven't changed it, absolutely make sure that default password gets changed. Otherwise, it's really easy to break into and cause all kinds of problems. For your Wi-Fi network, you want to make sure you use a secure Wi-Fi password. Just like logging into, if you've got a bank account that you log into online, you want that password to be secure. Same thing with your Wi-Fi password. You want that. You don't want people driving by to be able to just guess your password and log into it, or even use a brute force attack to just guess a bunch of passwords and get in. If your Wi-Fi password is password or something like that, you'll want to change that immediately. Another option, a couple other options, would be to use a guest Wi-Fi network. Most Wi-Fi routers have the ability to set a main network that you would use for example, you would use that for work, and then you can set up a separate network that you could give to guests or your kids or whoever, and it's separated from that main network so that if anybody is trying to get information, they're on a separate network. So check and see if your router offers the ability to set up a guest network, because that would really help with some security. And also, you have the option of setting up a VPN. And a VPN is a virtual private network. There are, your company, depending on who you work for, may already have a VPN set up for you to connect to the office. Some companies do that. But in addition to that, you can set up a VPN just for your own stuff. What a VPN is, I'll show you a diagram here. A VPN sets up an encrypted tunnel of information that connects you to, if your office is setting it up, the VPN would connect you to your office. But if you have you can purchase a VPN service from a provider, and in that case, it would set up an encrypted tunnel of communication between you and the VPN tunnel. So whether you're on a wired connection or a wireless connection, all of the communication that comes through that connection is going to be encrypted. So even if somebody does get into your Wi-Fi network and is trying to listen in on you or find out what you're doing, all the communication that's going over that connection is encrypted and they're not going to be able to get to it. So you sign into the VPN service, and then all of your communication goes from you to the VPN provider, and then the VPN provider routes things out to the internet. And it's a way of securing things. And there's a few, these things aren't very high cost. It is going to be a service that you have to pay for, but they're quite reasonable. Could be, you know, $45 a year if you get a deal on it. Some of the ones I would recommend would be NordVPN or Private Internet Access or Surfshark, and there's a number of services that would fit the bill. So take a look at that and consider using a VPN. Email. Email is very important for working from home. And some of the things that are potential problems with using email are phishing messages. And if you're not familiar with phishing, phishing is an email that is designed to look like it's legitimate from, could be from your own company, could be from a bank, from UPS, from Amazon, from Microsoft. The scammers are getting very good at making messages that look legitimate, but usually they'll contain a link or something for you to click on that routes you somewhere to collect information, and that's their goal. The goal of a phishing message is to collect credentials, usernames, passwords, contact information, anything that they can use to get into your to get information from you. And there's also spear phishing. Spear phishing is very similar to phishing, except it's targeted. And sometimes an attacker will start with a phishing message to collect some information and then use that information to send spear phishing messages, which look even more legitimate because they've got personal information contained within there. And also there's financial scams where they're looking to have money wired. There's tech support scams where they want you to call them up and send them money to fix your computer because they tell you it's broken. There's malware and ransomware. I'm sure that most of you have seen these things. So be careful about these. What do you do about them? The number one thing you can do with email problems like this is to stay informed. Check technology sites. One of the things we do for our customers is we send out some notices, and each month we send out information about the updates that are being installed and things like that, so that we can keep our customers informed. You as the user are going to be the most important line of defense against problems like this. So you want to stay informed. And the other thing I always tell our customers is don't click. If you get an email that has a link in it, don't click on the link. If you get an email that looks like it's from your bank or from somebody you know and it has a link, don't click on it. Browse to the site manually, log in manually, so that you know that you're going to a legitimate site and not being rerouted to somewhere strange. Be wary. Always be on the lookout. Look at every email message and think, okay, maybe this is not legitimate. Maybe be paranoid is a better term than be wary. You do want to keep your computer up to date. Most of the updates that you'll see come that Windows asks you to put in or other programs ask you to put in are going to be security related. It's a cat and mouse game. And as exploits are discovered, patches are put in place to fix those exploits. So you always want to stay ahead of the curve. And antivirus is important. The built-in antivirus on Windows is pretty decent. So if that's all you're using, you at least want to make sure that that's kept up to date. But you also have, there's also a number of options for for antivirus software, Norton and Symantec and Sophos and Kaspersky. So use reputable antivirus and keep it up to date. In addition to email, there's other vulnerabilities just in software. Viruses, which are self-replicating programs that could do a number of different things. There's ransomware, which is designed to, you've probably seen this in the news a lot. Ransomware is designed to encrypt all of the data on the computer, and then they hold it for ransom. It's all there, you just can't get to it until you pay them some money, and then they give you the password to decrypt your own data. Software vulnerabilities have been exposed. We're using Zoom right now, but a few months ago, Zoom was a real problem because there were a number of vulnerabilities in it. They weren't, Zoom was not ready for the amount of success that they experienced, and to their credit, they did a pretty good job of addressing those fairly quickly, and Zoom is pretty decent now, but you still want to be aware of it. And hackers are always looking for a way to get into your computer, and they may use software vulnerabilities and ransomware and other things to do it. So again, to address these things, you want to keep your computer up to date, and that means Windows updates, but it also means BIOS and firmware updates, which may not be as easy to implement for the average Joe, and you may want to enlist some help in identifying whether your computer needs a BIOS or a firmware update. If it's done incorrectly, it could cause your computer to no longer be functional. So you want to be careful about that, but it is important. Again, use up-to-date, reputable antivirus. And that means Symantec, Bitdefender, Kaspersky, ESET, Sophos. All of these programs are good, and they're pretty comparable. So I'm not going to say that one is which one is better than the other. Changes on a regular basis depending on the threats that are available. Also, keep your software up to date, not just Windows itself, but the software that you're running. Zoom is a good example. Zoom had vulnerabilities. They updated the software, so you want to make sure that your Zoom is up to date. Adobe has done the same thing with a number of their applications, Acrobat in particular. You know, and then there's QuickBooks, there's Java, there's your web browsers. All of these pieces of software have updates that are intended to address security vulnerabilities. When you're browsing the internet, be careful about where you're going. Don't click strange links, and just browsing the internet can take you to strange places, and there are a lot of malicious sites out there that want to take information from you, or worse. So be careful. Passwords. This is the bane of the IT person's existence, is passwords. They can be a good password is difficult to remember, and so that means that a lot of people tend to use weak passwords. They don't because they're easy to remember. And if you do have a good, strong password, then the tendency is to use that same password for all of your accounts. How many of you have one password that you use for 25 different accounts? I don't need a show of hands, but that is very common, and it's understandable. So, but it's also important that you don't do that. If one account is breached, and we've seen a number of these, even Equifax or credit card companies, and lots and lots of companies have had their account databases compromised. And if you're using a password to log in with one of them and they get compromised, now every single site that you share that password with is compromised, because it's out there for people to try. So you don't want to share passwords. The recommendations for securing things from a password perspective: use strong passwords or phrases. More than 8 characters, mixture of upper and lowercase, some numbers thrown in there. Make it so it's not easy to guess. Use a different password for every account. Everything that you log into should have a separate password, which means that's really hard to manage. Unless you're going to have a list written down with every single account and every single password, which gets to be a pain, that's hard to do. So I would recommend using a password manager, which makes things much, much easier. And this is what we do at Ethixa, is we have a password manager for, and I've probably got over 100 accounts. So, and there's a few really good password managers that are either free or inexpensive. LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, just to name a few. And a password manager is nice because it can automatically reset passwords. You can rotate passwords. You can automatically generate crazy, long, unusual passwords that nobody could possibly guess. And then you don't have to keep track of your passwords manually anymore. So that's a recommendation I would have. Also, implement multi-factor authentication for any account that you can. And multi-factor authentication, there's a couple ways to do that. That means that if somebody does get your password, that's still not enough because they need another piece of information. There are authentication apps for phones that generate a key that changes every 15 seconds or something. So it means that there's a little more work to log in because you type in your password, then it asks you for that code. You have to open your phone, type in that code. Another thing might be a text notification. So you log into the account and then they text you and you have to put in that code. But it's very helpful in making sure that things are secure. One thing that may get lost in the shuffle when you move to a work from home environment is backups. If you're in an office environment, generally the IT department takes care of backing up computers and data. But if you move to the home, you might not be doing that anymore, or you may not have even thought about it. So this is really important. You want to make sure that it might be data that's not getting backed up, applications and their configurations might not be backed up, and you may not have any backup hardware. You may have a single laptop or a single router or a single webcam. And so my recommendations here would be to implement a backup, preferably off-site. And there are some services that do cloud backups, like Carbonite would be a Code 42 is another one, so that you can back up your system. And it's, even if something happens locally, you have a fire, God forbid, something like that, you still have that information available to you because it's being backed up to the cloud. If you're going to do that, make sure it's a very reputable service that's doing the backups, because you want to make sure that your data is safe wherever you're putting it. I would also recommend using image-based backups, not just backing up your data, but imaging your entire hard drive so that your operating system and your applications and your configurations, everything is backed up, not just the data. And also consider having hardware available for some of your critical devices. Don't rely on just a single laptop. Have some kind of a backup so that if your laptop fails, you've got something else you can go to. Maybe you have an old laptop that you've tested, just to make sure you have something to go to. Same with routers and anything that's critical to your job. See if you can have some kind of a backup to it, just in case something fails, so that you're not down for a week or 2 weeks while you try to get a replacement for it. And that is pretty much everything I have. I didn't see anybody asking any questions.
I have one question in the chat, Ken. Someone asked, is it safe to click on an article such as one that would be found on the Microsoft Edge main page?
Okay, so that's a good question. There we have a um, you're already on the web, so it's not necessarily in an email. So if you have browsed to Microsoft's page, or you have an article popping up from that you know is from Microsoft, clicking those links is okay. And that's kind of what the web is for. So if you know that the source is valid, then clicking on links is safe. And that's a very good question. I'm just a little bit cautious and maybe overly paranoid. So that's what I would say. Just make sure that your source is valid before you click on the link. And Microsoft's Edge main page would be a valid source. Do we have any other questions? Everybody wants to go back to their coffee on this gray, dreary day.
Thank you, Ken.
Well, thank you all. It was good to have you this morning.
Well, and I just want to say thank you for being here with us today and really sharing your insights on how to navigate the challenges of working from home. I know we all definitely benefited from your talk today. I do just have a few housekeeping notes. I will be making available the recording of the training on the Wilkes University SBDC YouTube channel, and I will email that link to all attendees in case you'd like to review the training. Also, I will be emailing the link to a post-event survey just so that we can determine which of our resources will best suit your needs and what topics you would like to see as training sessions in the future. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending our training. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at the SBDC. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing all of you at future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Enjoy your day.
Good to see you again, Ken. Bye.
Bye.